My name is Kirsten Dufour. I am Assistant Director and Project Manager for Get to College. We're so excited that you're joining us today as we talk about dependency on the FAFSA. So first and foremost, the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. And this is the application that students need to complete, whether they're high school students that are going to college for the first time, or they're current college students that need to renew for the upcoming year, or they're an adult going back to grad school or finish a degree of some sort. So it's a free application that allows students to be eligible for a variety of financial aid, and it's depending on what the information on that application has, but it also will be used by the colleges that could potentially get students Pell Grants, student loans, and other need-based grants or work study. So we're going to talk about a key component to making sure that you're completing the FAFSA correctly, which is dependency. So it's a key step in knowing whose information that you use on the FAFSA. So one thing that we want to make sure and talk about is that a student is only going to use their information or their biological or adoptive parents' information. So this means that if they are an independent student on the FAFSA, which is what we're about to determine, they are only going to use their information. So the FAFSA opened on October the 1st for the 21-22 school year, starting fall 21, covering spring semester 22 and summer semester 22. So you can go ahead and do the FAFSA. I've dropped in the event links our link to the walkthrough for a dependent student. Independent student walkthrough will be available soon, as well as FSA ID creation from our YouTube channel. All great resources. So one thing that we're going to have you figure out today is if you are using parent information or just student information. So you never use anyone's information other than student or parent. You never use grandparent, aunt, uncle, legal guardian, anybody else. That's a key rule to keep in mind. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to look at what the FAFSA looks like, and we're going to see what are our options when it comes to the FAFSA and what that looks like for those students. So we're going to pull that up. I'm using the demo site here, but this is what it looks like for the FAFSA for students when you're in it. Know that there are actually 2 questions before you get this one, but you can see here that we're at the dependency status. This has moved forward. We've already put in the basic information as far as contact info. When we log in with FSA ID, we've already put in school info. But 2 questions that have already been answered by the time that we get to this that are dependency questions is the first one, were you born before January 1st, 1998? So when you log in with your birthday, that already indicates if you're independent or not. The threshold to age independence for the FAFSA is 24. Will you be 24 or older during the academic year you're completing the FAFSA for? So if you're over 24, then absolutely you will be considered independent on the FAFSA, won't use parent info. The next question that's not showing up here, but is a question for the FAFSA is what degree are you seeking? It asked us earlier in the form of what degree you're seeking for the upcoming year. If you choose anything other than master's, so bachelor's, first or second bachelor's, associates, or certificate program, if you are working on your master's, whether it's an MBA, MA, MS, JD, PhD, MD, you are considered independent. So regardless of your age, you are independent on the FAFSA if you're working on a master's degree. So 24 and master's are our 2 questions that are already answered that are precursors to the dependency questions. Now you can see the first one that we answer. It's asking, as of today, you as a student, what is your marital status? For students that are married as of today, you're considered an independent student. It takes into consideration financial amounts from you yourself as well as your spouse. So you can see the options are married, remarried, single, separated, divorced, or widowed. You have to give a date for all of the ones that are not single. If you are currently separated or divorced, you still have to provide that date. And being married as of today is the only thing that makes you independent. So if you're separated or divorced as of today, that doesn't make you independent as far as marital status goes. There may be other variables. So the next set of questions that ask us, do you now or will you have children who provide more than half of their support from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022? A couple of things here. First and foremost, you have to have children. You have to provide at least half support for them. Second is that you have to also be knowing that you're going to be doing that in the future, in the academic year that you're completing the FAFSA for. So if you're a mom or a dad, regardless of your age, and you have children, you can be independent on the FAFSA. If you answer yes to this question, then you just have to indicate your household size, including your children. If the next question comes up and it says, do you have dependents other than children or spouse who live with you and receive more than half of their support from those same dates, July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2022? This would be if you are a legal guardian, maybe a younger sibling, a niece or nephew, someone younger than you that you're legal guardian of and are not falling in the children or spouse category. So the way these questions work is if you say yes to any one of them, you don't have to answer the rest of the independent questions, but it continues to move through until you say yes to one. Then we'll see what it looks like and it tells us to do. So this next checklist, you want to make sure you answer each one correctly, making sure you can't say yes to just one of these. So it's asking, are you currently serving in the U.S. Armed Forces for the purposes other than training? It's important to know that the National Guard and Reserve, unless you have active duty orders, just being an enlistee, that does not make you independent on the FAFSA. The next question that comes over is, are you a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces? And then this third question, it's a doozy. It's actually 3 questions in one. So I want to make sure that we know what exactly it's asking and know that we only have to say yes to just one of these questions in order to say yes to the entire question. So it's asking, anytime since the student's 13th birthday, have both their parents been deceased? At any time since their 13th birthday, have they been in foster care? Or anytime since the 13th birthday, have they been a dependent or ward of the courts? This has been like DHS has removed them from their house, or there's court orders for someone else to take care of them. So if they can say yes, even if it was like 13 and a half, they were in foster care and then got adopted, since their 13th birthday, you would say yes to this question. So just making sure you know that doesn't have to say yes to all of them. You just need to be able to say yes to one. The next question asks, as determined by a court in a state of legal residence, were you an emancipated minor? So just know that here in Mississippi, you need to work individually with your college to make sure that they accept emancipation for financial aid purposes. Not all the colleges do, so you'll just need to work with them in order to make sure that you are considered independent for financial aid with emancipation. For colleges outside of Mississippi, I would advise the same thing, is to work with them in that individual case-by-case basis to see how they handle that. You'll find colleges handle it a myriad of ways. All right, the next question, does someone other than your parent or step-parent have legal guardianship of you as determined by a court in your state of legal residence? The key things that we need to pay attention to here is the word legal guardianship. So if you or your student is working on the FAFSA and they have custody, or someone has custody of them other than their biological or adoptive parents, custody and guardianship are not the same thing in FAFSA world. So know that, I know we talk about that in K through 12 generally interchangeably, but the major difference that we need to pay attention to here is custody is temporary and guardianship is permanent. That's why it's specified only legal guardianship here. If a student is in a legal guardianship, has court papers that specifically say legal guardianship, those are important to keep on hand because the colleges may ask for them in verification. But it's important to know the student will be independent here. So for example's sake, if they say yes, it explains parent or guardianship. If they have a parent that's a guardian, that's not what we're asking for here. Custody by a parent's not the same thing. But as you can see, it makes them independent. We completely skip parent information and only use student information on the FAFSA, but only if they can say truthfully yes to one of these questions. The last question that comes up and asks is about homeless. So it asks, on or after July 1, 2020, was the student homeless or self-supporting and at risk of being homeless? So no, for the FAFSA purposes, homeless is considered inconsistent, reliable housing, and the student needs to not be living with a parent while considered homeless. They need to be unaccompanied. If you say yes here, you can see you have to identify who can vouch that this is the scenario. Maybe you're the counselor watching this and you know that you're going to be relied upon to provide this information. Get to College has a lot of great resources for you from some national organizations that support homeless youth that can help you write this letter. Just know that the student has to identify one of these, generally speaking, as a way to identify that they truly are considered homeless and unaccompanied. But there are different resources, like I mentioned, that we can help provide you with. Or if you're a student watching this and you're like, that's me, that I qualify as that, just know that Get to College can help you. Our website is gettocollege.org. You're obviously watching us on Facebook, so like our page, follow our page, and we'll definitely make sure and share out resources and connect you with those as you need them. So if you go through and you say no to all of these questions, and it takes us to this page and it says, I will provide information about my parents. So you're considered a dependent student, meaning you have to use biological or adoptive parent information like we talked about in the beginning. So just know, even if you don't physically live with your parents, so if you live with a family member, maybe you don't even live in the same state as your parents, or you have never lived in the same state as your parents. Unless you can say yes to one of those questions, you still have to use biological or adoptive parent information. But maybe you see the screen and you say, wait, Kirsten, there's one that says I'm unable to provide parent information. Just know that if you select this, what happens is it pretty much shuts the FAFSA down here and goes straight into professional judgment. So what professional judgment is working directly with the college that you're looking to attend, financial aid office, and going through a pretty rigorous interview and information session may require a lot of information from you to determine that you really truly cannot provide parent information. If your parents just refuse to provide information, or you don't want to ask them for it, that's not the option to choose that. Know that the FAFSA is a federal form, and you have to answer it truthfully and accurately, just like you would all of your federal forms that you're completing. We know sometimes those can be hard conversations for maybe an educator or counselor to have educating parents, or maybe you as a student trying to educate your family. Get to College is here to help you if you want to set up an appointment with your family and us, and we can talk through what it means, what's required. Most of the information that's already out there, the federal government already has, whether it's in tax return through the IRS or Social Security number that's issued by the federal government. So just know that this is the information as far as who do you use, student only or student and parent. And there's a lot of myths with this, but the key rule of thumb is unless you can say yes to one of these questions on the FAFSA, you're gonna be using parent information as biological or adoptive. Thanks for joining us today. If we have any questions in the chat, we will, in the comments, we'll come back and drop those links in there for any resources that maybe we can help address for you. But we're glad that you've joined us, and we hope that you have a great afternoon.